Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into a really interesting bit of ancient text.
Yeah. Which part?
Numbers chapter 6. It gets into this practice called the Nazirite vow.
Ah, right. The Nazarites. That's a fascinating one. A kind of special separation, a vow to the Lord.
Exactly. And it wasn't just for men, right? The text says men or women could take this on.
That's correct. It was open to both, which is, pretty noteworthy for the context.
But what really jumps out are the rules. They seem incredibly specific, really demanding.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't a casual thing. It involved a complete shift in lifestyle, very detailed regulations.
Okay, so let's break that down. What did this separation actually involve? What were the main rules?
Well, the first one is pretty comprehensive, complete abstinence from anything, and I mean anything from the grapevine.
Anything, like not just wine.
Nope. No wine, no fermented grape drinks, no vinegar made from them, no grape juice.
Wow.
Not even fresh grapes or raisins.
Seriously, raisins too.
Yep. And it goes even further, not even the seeds or the skins. If it came off a grapevine, it was completely off limits.
That's huge. Grapes were a staple, weren't they? For food, drink, celebration?
Definitely. So avoiding them entirely really set someone apart. It was a major daily restriction.
Okay, so no grape products at all.
Oh.
What was the next big thing?
The hair. This is probably the most famous part.
Right, the long hair.
Exactly. For the whole time they were under the vow, no razor could touch their head.
Just let it grow.
Let it grow long. And the text itself calls it a symbol
A symbol of what?
of their separation, their dedication, their holiness to the Lord. It was a visible sign for everyone to see.
A very public marker then.
Yeah.
So uncut hair, no grape stuff. What was the third main area you mentioned was intense?
Yeah, this one really underscores the level of separation. It was about purity from death.
Okay, how strict was that?
Extremely strict. A Nazarite could not go near any dead body. Any. And the text makes a point of saying this applied even if it was their own immediate family.
Wait, so even if their father, mother, brother, or sister died?
Even then, they couldn't become ritually impure by contact with the dead.
Wow. That overrides, fundamental family duties around mourning and burial.
It seems so. The text says the symbol of their separation, the hair, took precedence. Their consecration to God for that period was paramount. Death was sort of the ultimate source of defilement that would break that state.
That really paints a picture of being set apart in a profound way. It wasn't just personal piety, it was a different ritual status.
Precisely. But, life happens. What if someone, say, dropped dead right next to them, suddenly, unexpectedly?
Right, accidents happen. Does the law account for that kind of accidental defilement?
It does, and it's not treated lightly at all. If that happens, their dedicated hair, that key symbol, is considered defiled.
So the symbol itself is tainted by the contact with death.
Exactly, and there's a whole process to fix it. First, on the 7th day after the incident, they have to shave their head.
Shave it all off. The hair they'd been growing.
All of it. It's a cleansing act, removing the defiled symbol.
Okay, and
Yeah.
then? Is there more?
Oh, yes. On the 8th day, they need to bring offerings to the priest at the tent of meeting.
What kind of offerings?
2 birds, specifically 2 doves or 2 young pigeons.
And what does the priest do with those?
He offers one as a sin offering that's for the defilement itself, the impurity, and the other as a burnt offering, symbolizing rededication. It makes atonement for the sin of becoming defiled.
Atonement for something accidental.
For the ritual defilement, yes. And importantly, on that same 8th day, they have to reconsecrate their head, essentially restarting the vow's visible sign.
Okay, restarting. But here's the big question. Does it just pause the vow? Or does it wipe the slate clean? Does the time they already served count?
That's the kicker. The text is absolutely explicit. They also have to bring a year-old male lamb as a guilt offering for the trespass against the vow's sanctity. But then it says, and this is crucial, the previous days do not count because he became defiled during his separation.
So all the time they put in before the accident, it's just gone.
Gone. Wiped out. They have to start the entire period of separation all over again from that point, after the purification and offerings.
Man, that shows just how sacred and maybe how fragile that state of separation was considered. One accidental event, and you're back to square one.
It really does emphasize the seriousness of maintaining that ritual purity.
All right, so that covers breaking the vow accidentally. What about successfully finishing it? When the agreed time is up, how do they, get back to normal life?
There's an equally detailed ceremony for that, for completing the period of separation.
More offerings, I assume.
Definitely. The Nazarite goes to the entrance of the tent of meeting and presents a whole set of specific offerings to the Lord.
Let's hear. What do they have to bring?
Okay, so a year-old male lamb without defect for a burnt offering.
Symbolizing dedication again.
Seems likely, marking the completion. Then, a year-old ewe lamb without defect for a sin offering.
A sin offering, even if they completed it successfully.
Yeah, perhaps covering any unknown or minor ritual issues during the vow period. And then, a ram without defect for a fellowship offering.
Fellowship offering. That one's different, isn't it? Part of it is eaten.
Exactly. It often symbolized communion, peace, restored relationship. Here, it probably signifies the Nazarite rejoining the community, sharing a sacred meal after their time apart.
Makes sense. Anything else besides the animals?
Yes, along with those, they bring grain offerings and drink offerings, which usually accompanied major sacrifices, and also a basket of unleavened bread.
Unleavened bread, like specific types.
The text mentions cakes of fine flour mixed with oil and wafers spread with oil. Very specific.
Okay, quite the list. And the priest handles all this.
Yes, the priest takes these gifts, presents them, sacrifices the lamb for the burnt offering, the ewe for the sin offering, and the ram for the fellowship offering, along with the bread and the grain and drink offerings.
So after all those sacrifices, what about the hair? The hair they've grown for potentially months or years.
Ah, the hair. That's a central part of the completion ritual. Right there, at the entrance to the tent of meeting, the Nazarite must shave off all that dedicated hair.
Finally gets a haircut. But what happens to the shaved hair?
It's not just discarded. It has a specific destination. It's put into the fire that's under the sacrifice of the fellowship offering.
Wow, okay. So the hair, the very symbol of their separation, is offered up, consumed in the same sacred fire as the offering that marks their return to fellowship.
Exactly. It's incredibly symbolic. The sign of their apartness is consumed as they rejoin the community through that fellowship sacrifice.
Powerful imagery. Is that the end of the ritual? Can they, go have a grape now?
Almost. There's one more step involving the priest and the Nazarite. The priest takes a boiled shoulder from the fellowship ram, one of the unleavened cakes, and one of the wafers, and places them into the Nazarite's hands. Then the priest waves these items before the Lord as a special type of offering, a wave offering.
A wave offering.
Yes. And these waved portions, along with some other specific parts of the ram, belong to the priest.
Right.
After all of that is done, the sacrifices, the shaving, the hair in the fire, the wave offering then, the text says, the Nazarite is finally allowed to drink wine again.
Only then. It marks the absolute end of the vow and their full return to normal life.
Precisely. It's a very clear boundary. And the text adds a little note saying, this is the standard law, the required process. Even if someone could afford to bring extra voluntary offerings, the core ritual had to be followed.
It really emphasizes the structure, the specific actions required, not just the intention or personal wealth.
Definitely. The ritual itself held the weight.
Now, what's really interesting is the shift that happens right after this in number 6. We go from these super detailed rules for one person's intense individual vow straight into instructions for a blessing for the entire community.
Yes. The Aaronic blessing. It's quite a transition, isn't it? From the particular to the communal.
It really is.
Yeah.
So God tells Moses to instruct Aaron and his sons, the priests, how to bless all the Israelites.
Correct. This isn't something that people do. It's a blessing spoken over them by the priests.
And it's probably one of the most famous passages. Can you give us the words exactly as they appear in the text?
Of course. It's structured beautifully in 3 lines. The Lord bless you and keep you.
Okay.
The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace.
Such powerful words. Protection, divine favor, grace, attention, and peace. And does the text say why the priest should say this? What's the purpose?
It does. It states that by pronouncing this blessing, the priests will put God's name on the Israelites.
Put God's name on them. What does that signify?
It seems to imply placing them under God's identity, his authority, his protection, his ownership, almost like a divine marker.
And there's a promise attached, right?
A direct promise from God follows immediately. I will bless them.
So the priests speak the words, putting God's name on the people, and God himself commits to enacting the blessing.
Exactly. The priestly action becomes the channel for the divine blessing upon the entire community. It's about God's favor being extended collectively.
So this one chapter, number 6, gives us both ends of a spectrum almost. You have the extreme personal discipline and separation of the Nazirite.
Right, with all the detailed rituals for keeping pure and completing the vow.
And then you have this sweeping communal blessing initiated by God, pronounced by priests, bring divine peace and favor to everyone.
It's a fascinating look at different dimensions of religious life and relationship with the divine in these ancient texts. Individual commitment alongside communal blessing.
Yeah, it shows the coexistence of, rigorous personal effort and discipline on one hand.
And the idea of receiving grace and favor as a collective, as a people under God on the other. It really gives you insight into their concepts of holiness, dedication, and divine presence.
It definitely offers a rich picture for anyone exploring these foundational texts and the ideas they contain about purity, dedication, and God's relationship with individuals and the community.
Absolutely. It highlights that complexity. The demanding path of the individual vow contrasted with the shared gift of the communal blessing.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into number 6, here's something to think about, drawn just from what we've discussed in the text. Consider that journey we traced. Starting with an individual choosing strict separation, marked outwardly by uncut hair, bound by detailed rules and rituals involving sacrifice and fire for both mishaps and completion. And then, immediately following that, we get this communal blessing designed to put God's very name on the people and grant them peace. What might this contrast, this flow from intense personal ritual to widespread communal grace, suggest about how these ancient writers saw the interplay between an individual's sacred striving and the community's overall experience of divine blessing and peace?
That's a great point to reflect on, the connection or maybe the distinction between those two modes of relating to the divine.